Okay, I'm not trying to create another 10 ArriveCAN meetings. It could be in writing. We could get guidance from the legal in writing that those are the terms, and these are the providers, the healthcare providers that they. And also, I want to understand the implication. I clearly want to understand the implication. And I also want to understand the safeguards that we are going to put in place, because passing a motion saying let's make sure accommodation, great, but also if we don't go into passing that motion with understanding what those safeguards are and how they're going to be put in place, I think it's a challenge. Okay, so agreed in making sure that we exercise everything, every tool in our toolkit to ensure that these guys arrive and provide the testimony, especially in lieu of the AG. I totally support making sure that we have the safeguards, both for the individual as well as the office of the Sergeant at Arms. It's important, and I need to understand that. Having a step of pursuing those in those fashion, it is important. And if we have to move a amendment to this motion, we're working on moving that. And as well, and I'll close in the next probably 2 to 3 minutes. I want to go back to the other aspect of what Irek was talking about. So ArriveCAN is labeled as an application that was 80,000 and it mushroomed into 60,000. ArriveCAN initial intent was to be able to enter the individual's name, last name, passport number, and the time of arrival. That application, yes, it's costed $80,000. During the emergency time, the government and the CBSA decided that this is a platform that could be expanded. And you heard from Irek that how it went and the ultimate development cost of an application with 177 enhancement, it came roughly around $8 million. So the notion that this was an $80,000 application and all of a sudden it came, it's false. There were never ArriveCAN as this because the requirement were completely different things. So we were comparing apple to oranges. Okay, so never $80,000 was designed. There was no plan for ArriveCAN with 177 modification that was coming in at the rate of one every other day. That was planned for 80,000, and government said, okay. Now, we hear from across the aisle that, across the table, we constantly hear that this is Trudeau Arrive Scan application. So first of all, it's not called Arrive Scam. It's called ArriveCAN. Second of all, this is not Trudeau's application. This is a Government of Canada and CBSA application that the base for it existed. So if we want to stop, misinforming the public, this is a good time to start. This is not an $80,000 application. This was at best, when you look at the development, and I'll be ready to argue with anyone that how much the cost of this 177 modification would have been. There's no way it will come to what $80,000 is. So the cost is around $8,000 to $9,000 around $8 to $9 million around the development. All the other support stuff, I'm not going to go because Irek went to it. But I want to close with this, and I put that challenge in a very obscure way to the Auditor General, which I didn't get an answer. By the way, on the weekend I was in a gathering, and I was asked point blank that how much this an application would be worth it. And I had someone who also is an expert in e-commerce application, and I put that question to him. I said, if you had an application that had 18 million users, it was downloaded 60 million times, it facilitated over billions of dollars, and it saved lives, and the error of margin was 10,000 among 60 million. And you go figure out what that percentage is, what that application would be if we were going to sell that application in the market. And it was a simple question. Is it worth more than what cost of a development of $5 million? And he said, I would assess that this application would be worth in hundreds of millions of dollars. So let's not confuse the cost of the application with the value of the application. Let's not confuse the fact that CBSA made the decision to develop this internally because they could control. They could make sure that the knowledge transfer stays there. Was it perfect execution? Absolutely not. Is it a good application? Yes. And please, please, please stop saying this is an $80,000 application that's mushroomed to 60 million. Stop calling it a Trudeau Arrive scam app. Stop linking and inefficiencies in department during an emergency into government officials and the fishing expedition that you guys are going. So, in summary, we will, once the safeguards is in place, agree into amending this motion to ensure that we can have the two witnesses that we are talking about to come and provide the testimony that we so desperately are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Choueiri. Mr. Sousa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you also to Ms. Vagnola for her work in trying to find a compromise in this nuclear option, setting a precedent that may cause some concern relative to the various matters in regards to those health issues and concerns and the precedent that would set. And I appreciate her, Mrs. Vagnola's attempt to foster a means by which we can respect the concerns of the witnesses. They've advised us. There's been legal counsel, and we've attempted, I presume, twice to invite the witnesses to appear. Another time, and maybe a third would be appropriate, but given the motion before us, the consequences of it that will have in regards to apprehending these witnesses and the implications it would have for us regarding the matters that have been identified by my colleagues and by Mrs. Vagnola herself, who also appreciates these concerns with respect to the integrity and the privacy of the matter that has been addressed to us. I mean, we have been advised by the witnesses and their lawyers to proceed with some caution as a consequence of what has taken place. And the Globe and Mail and other media outlets have already commented on the circumstances by what has occurred, the impact it's had on certain individuals, the conduct by members of this committee who've gone beyond the scope of the committee to address witnesses directly, to circumvent at times the investigation and the investigators, to address matters with independent agencies of government who, by their own accord, do not report directly to a parliamentarian or an elected official, but to the circumstances at hand, including the RCMP. That's their job. They don't take instructions from us, nor should they. And what we're now trying to suggest is we are taking the position, and we have that right, certainly as parliamentarians and as the primacy of Parliament, but to use it in a consequence of this nature, the way it's presented to us today, versus a circumstance that, because it's still ongoing, the investigation is still ongoing, the process by addressing the allegations and the criminality, if that exists, is still underway. And we need to have that process take place. We need the integrity of that process. And I get the frustrations. that we're all having in terms of having the witnesses appear before us and affirming the concerns and the actions that they've taken by these particular witnesses, and also by the others that have been discussed and named throughout our deliberations. But there's also a responsibility, I believe, that the consequences of some of the actions that we take, are they going to fulfill and support the investigation? Are they going to enable those responsible to get to the matter at hand? Are they going to be prejudiced by our activities? I don't know the answer, but I do know that the way this motion is put forward, and I really appreciate Mrs. Vignola's attempt to foster something more cooperative, because we're all in agreement to foster a way to enable these witnesses to appear before us. There is that nuclear option. There is a precedent that would occur, and that is ultimately a concern that I think all of us share. And I just when I go through it, and I appreciate that the front end of this motion has been amended to assess more accurately some of the situations that are before us. In other words, the partisan political stuff that's been removed is helpful, because it's not the way it originally plays. It was as though elected officials and others are complicit with the activities of the activities of CVSA or others. And again, I'm not presupposing it. Like the way we were acting, it assumes that everyone's guilty. We haven't even attempted to determine what actions occurred, and there are other matters that we have privilege to receive that address some of that. And there's also the fact that Christian Firth and others have long been doing business with the government of Canada, years before the development of ArriveCAN. Certainly during the time of the Conservative government, they were quite active in their engagement. We already have a motion that asks to determine and collect those activities, to understand more holistically how these things have taken place. And Christian Firth and others have already appeared before us, and they've already identified some of the processes by which they came to obtain contracts with government throughout the last 20 years. But it's important, given the allegations that are out there, that we want to get to the bottom of what has taken place relative to the application of ArriveCAN, which is a compilation of many IT initiatives. The option then to detain the witnesses, to issue a form of an arrest, to supersede the caution that has been given to us relative to the matters of health, that takes a pause for us. That gives us a reason to be cautious and a reason to offer alternatives, I believe, in the circumstances before us. And we still have more results to come to us. We still have the finalization of the investigation to read and to address. I consider what has been spoken already by some of my colleagues in respect to the establishment of GC strategies in the light of in the recent circumstances when the COVID Alert app came to be, and the suite of tools and the guidance that was developed by government to slow the spread of COVID, to provide opportunities for international trade, to keep businesses going, to enable millions and millions of Canadians to cross the border, and frankly, to be protected from those crossing in. I mean, we had